I almost gave up on my dream. The cruel voice in my head told me that I was failing. And for a moment, I believed it. But then I slowed down. And while I was slowing down, I revealed something that changed everything. And it might be the reminder you need today too. Do you know those moments where you start to wonder, am I failing? Maybe I'm just not made for this, on the edge of giving up? I've been there, believe me, many, many times. And just recently, I fell into one of these deep, dark holes again. And honestly, if I didn't love what I'm doing so incredibly much, I might have given up, but I didn't. So that's the story I want to share with you today because what I discovered in those moments of deep frustration, when I was full of shame, feeling like a failure, like really dark down, embarrassed, and feeling small, that's when I peeled away one layer after the other and I made some life changing realizations. And maybe that's exactly the reminder you need to keep on walking your path too. So let me take you back to the moment it all began. Let me share how I discovered that the most cruel voice in my life was actually my own. And what happens when you start to see it as an invitation to look deeper with compassion. When I started on this path as a coach, I thought that success meant doing it right, following the strategies, working harder, being more productive, moving faster, having the perfect marketing tools. That was the model I saw everywhere. But whenever I slowed down, which I always do because reflection is just my nature, something really uncomfortable came up. And that's where my story begins. Do you know that when you just want to do everything right, trying so hard? I did. I was following the strategies, trying to be productive, trying to move faster, trying to reach more people, trying to have the perfect marketing skills, but somehow it didn't work. And then, in the middle of all this effort, I caught myself slipping into reflection again, like always. Instead of pushing harder, my mind started asking questions. Why does it feel like swimming against the stream? What's really going on? How do you feel? What do you observe here? So I started to reflect. And that's actually when the cruel voice started to show up. It said, "You are so lazy. You're wasting your time. You will never make this. Come on, what are you doing here? What's wrong with you? Why can't you just get it right?" And it went on and on and on. And for a moment, I believed it. I suddenly felt so much shame and guilt for who I was and what I did. And I tried to push myself back into this business mode to be more like all these people around me I compared myself to. But inside, I felt this tension growing, and the cruel voice got louder and meaner. And luckily, when it was on its peak, thanks to many decades of inner work, I know when this voice becomes so ridiculous, cruel, it's nothing I need to believe, even when it feels real. So I knew when the voice gets that cruel, something deeper is happening. And I could feel it in my body too. My nervous system was off. I was totally in fight or flight. And here's the thing, when we are in that state, when we are in fight or flight, our mind isn't a wise advisor. It's just reduced to its primal job, and that's keeping us alive. It doesn't care how we feel, it just wants us to be alive. Now, that's not a good place to get coaching or strategy from. So instead of trying to think my way out, I luckily slowed down. I observed and I remembered emotions are messengers. So they point to something that wants to move. And if I can be brave enough to feel all of them, then the pain transforms into a gift. So again, I reflected. I slowed down. I felt the shame. I felt the guilt. I felt the pain, allowing myself to be there with whatever came up. And this time, I had such a big aha moment. I suddenly realized reflection isn't wasting time, it's awareness. It's like pausing on a hike, when you check your map, but also when you're lifting your eyes and look everywhere around. If you don't pause from time to time, you risk missing the beauty around you or walking into danger. Awareness is what keeps the journey alive and aligned. And that's when it clicked. How I do things, it's not fundamentally wrong. That's just a limiting belief, but not the truth. So, my joy for reflection and philosophy and deep thinking isn't actually laziness, how I called it. It's exactly why I am a coach and why I can help people so powerfully to transform their lives. Because through that, I can easily sit with paradox, untangle it, and shine clarity for others. And I love doing that. So, what I thought was my weakness was actually my gift. And here is my message for you. When your inner voice turns cruel, remember that's not the truth, so don't believe it. It's just a signal. The cruel voice is an alarm bell that tells you something inside of you needs compassion, not pressure. And what if what you've been calling your weakness is actually your gift? Don't try to cut pieces of yourselves off or try to be like other people, because your quirks, your preferences, and even your dislikes, they are not here by accident. They are here on purpose. They are signposts pointing you towards your purpose. Now, that reflection cracked something open, because when you slow down and reflect, you don't just disarm a cruel voice and that's it, but you also uncover deeper layers underneath it, the ones that are quietly asking for love and healing, but you were not aware of them. So, in my case, more came up, more came on the surface. I discovered a misalignment that I carried for many decades. Now, here's the moment when I realized I wasn't failing, I was just living by someone else's values. Okay, so you already know I wanted to be successful as a coach, to grow, to thrive, to finally do it right. And I thought if I followed the models I saw, other business leaders, my husband, who is very successful, and all other super successful people who seem to have it all together. Only when I do it like them, then I would make it. But in reality, the harder I tried to do all the things like they did, the more I felt stuck. So, what I did is I compared myself constantly and always came up short. And the same happened this time when I was in this deep crisis. So, I compared myself and then I asked, why am I not interested in all these algorithms or social media? Why is it so hard for me to get all these smart business strategies? Why can't there be more like these business gurus or my husband who is very successful and strategic when he builds a business? Basically, why am I failing? So I felt like a failure. I thought, I'm a failure, a loser, and I will never be successful. So I kept measuring myself against my husband, against other coaches, against other successful people who seemed to have it all together. And every time I did, every time I compared myself, of course, I was less successful. I was slow, I was behind. Yeah, that was the story I basically told myself all the time. But now I knew already I need to slow down. And I did. And I reflected and I found myself so out of alignment. So I asked myself, where did I lose myself on the way? Because for me, misalignment, this icky feeling in your body, this is always an indicator for me that I wasn't authentic to myself. And that's what led me deeper. So I dug deeper and then values came to my mind, this huge topic. So I reviewed this. I went through my value work and I realized actually being a businesswoman, it was never one of my highest values. Sharing from my heart, telling my own healing stories and my clients' healing stories, inspiring others to transform their lives. That's one of my highest values. So I realized I'd been carrying other people's values, not mine. And I thought they were mine. So I asked myself, why am I doing this? Where does it come from? And that's when I saw the pattern. Because as a child, I had learned that love was conditional on adopting someone else's values, especially my father's. So if I wanted to belong, I had to live by his rules, by his values, and not my own. And without even realizing it, I carried that pattern into adulthood. So when my husband thrived in his way, I thought I had to keep up with him and live by his rhythm and do it exactly like he does. Otherwise, I would fail. But that wasn't mine. And that's why it felt so hard, because I was constantly doing things that were absolutely not my nature. And this time, instead of pushing harder, I reflected and I coached myself through it. I asked, what are actually my values? And I didn't know, because it was so new for me to live by my values. And what I discovered was so freeing. My dream was solid. I wasn't failing. I had just been driving the wrong vehicle to get me there. It was like driving a heavy truck up a narrow mountain trail. And no wonder this feels exhausting and impossible, because the truck wasn't built for my path. What I needed was a mountain bike, which is light, where I can easily go up this path, and it's exactly designed for this mountain path. So my dream was solid. I simply had to switch the vehicle I used to carry it, one that is perfect for my dream, for my path. So the fall wasn't a failure, it was just misalignment. I was just using someone else's map or vehicle to get there. But once I went back to do it aligned with my values, it suddenly felt so much lighter. And it was like now swimming with the stream instead of against it. So, my message for you, if your path feels heavy, it might be that you are living by someone else's values. So, try a quick value reset, pause and ask, whose values am I actually living by? Where did I lose myself? What are my values? And you can find this out when you look around in your life for clues. What's on your desk, on your nightstand? What is something no one ever has to remind you to do in your free time? So when you look around and you see a stack of books, it might point to learning, studying. Pictures of your kids might point to family. Your environment reveals what you actually care about, and those are your values. And when you realign with them, I promise the path feels lighter and you feel like swimming with the stream. So realizing that I have been living someone else's values was another crack of light in this huge crisis. And still, there was another layer that needed my attention. So as you can see, this time the crisis hit me really, really deep. But I worked through one layer after another, and yet what surfaced after that wasn't the cruel voice anymore or even values. It was something quieter, but more disencouraging. It was the heavy feeling of being invisible and what I do is useless. So then came the hardest layer, when all my effort felt invisible. You know, when I started sharing online, my dream was simple but big. I wanted to inspire people. I had this picture in my head. I wanted to share my stories, my reflections, my healing, but not just for me, but so that others could find themselves too in it. So I imagined like a ripple effect, you know? I share my stories, people watching, they're resonating, they're writing me back, they're telling me how much I helped them. I dreamed of impact, of connection, of lives being touched. But then, reality. So I poured my heart into these videos, and often it felt like they went into nothingness. No one would see them. Silence, maybe a few likes. And these are my friends. Maybe one or two comments. So it really seemed like what I did stayed invisible. It's absolutely useless what I do. And I had many of those moments when I was about to quit, you know, my YouTube channel and all my social media, and there it was again. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the screen, and I didn't even want to think about creating another video. Even the word content made me feel sick. So the knot in my throat was so tight. My chest felt heavy, my breath shallow. And yes, there was again this bitter taste in my mouth, in my body, the taste of defeat. I thought, this is useless. No one cares. Maybe I just don't have what it takes. That's ridiculous what I'm doing, and I should immediately stop embarrassing myself. Now, that's the place I fell into. That was another layer of that crisis. But I fell into this hole not because the numbers were small, but because I made them mean that I was small, that I was invisible and ridiculous. And in that heaviness, I did what now I knew was my way to get out. I slowed down again. So I didn't push it away, I sat with it. The pain, the frustration. And I asked myself, okay, what's really going on here? Why does it feel so painful? And what I found was this: it wasn't really about views or numbers or likes or anything like that. It was about meaning. I had attached my worth to an outside measure. And of course, that hurts because I was giving my power away. So I turned the question around and I asked, why did I start this at the first place? And when I asked that, I remembered I didn't start to chase numbers or to feed an algorithm. I started because my own healing felt so important and too important to keep it locked inside, because I was convinced when I share my healing story and those of my clients, it could inspire many other people to heal too. And every time I told a story, I shared a tool, I reflected out loud, I was healing another piece inside of me too. So the truth is, even if no one ever responded, it would be still worth it, because it's not about that. Because every video, first of all, heals me too. And if it helps one other person along the way, then that's already impact. And then I remembered one line that I always tell my clients when they feel disencouraged. It's so much easier to help others, but it's harder to, get ourselves out of these spirals and holes. But what I always tell them is never underestimate the impact you have. And that hit me. Yes, that's it. Because I can never fully know how my stories transform someone else's life. And even if just one person felt lighter, better, inspired, that's what it's all about. It's not about numbers. And that for me was the breakthrough. I suddenly saw that impact is often invisible. It lives quietly inside people and sometimes for years before it blossoms. So the seed is planted the moment I share. And the moment they hear your words too when you share something. And just because you don't see the sprout doesn't mean it isn't growing and becoming a huge plant. So who knows who saw my videos? And who knows what impact it had on them? Sometimes it's the person who never tells you that they were touched. And sometimes it's just simply you healing in the act of sharing, reflecting. So once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And that felt so good because I realized even the videos with less than 50 views, they matter too, because first of all, I matter, these healing stories matter, and the act of speaking truth matters. And come on, 50 people, that's a lot. These are 50 people, and maybe one of them felt better or lighter. So every time I press record now, and this was also the case today, I remember that I'm not just creating content for an algorithm, I'm creating healing. And like so often, when you let go of the pressure, suddenly you can see what you couldn't see before. The same was my case, when I realized that a day after. So I spoke with two friends from two different corners of the world, and both of them told me that someone they knew had brought up my work, saying how much they loved it and how much they were inspired by it. Of course, that felt so good. And that moment just confirmed what I had realized before, that the ripples always go much farther than you can see or you even think they could. And here is my message for you: never ever underestimate the impact you have. It's an invisible impact. Sometimes it's just one conversation, or a smile, a word of encouragement, or simply showing up authentically. You never know who needed that moment. You never know the impact you made. And you might never know, but I can guarantee you this: when you share from your heart, then it's never wasted. It's always exactly that, what the world needs. Okay, so this is the path I walked in my crisis, from the cruelty of my own voice to the weight of living by someone else's values to the quiet despair of feeling invisible. And yes, the good thing, the gifts out of that is that each layer brought me closer to the truth that now guide me forward as I live my dream. And as I go even farther in my dream, as I grow. Now remember, your cruel voice is not the truth. It's just a signal. It's calling for compassion. And it's an opportunity to look deeper, to bring light into what needs to be revealed. And then you're not failing when it feels heavy. No, it just means that maybe something is misaligned. So slow down, look deeper. Maybe you are carrying someone else's values. You're using the wrong vehicle, And the doorway to success is always through your own values, your own way. That's the only way how it can work, because you don't want to swim against the stream all the time, right? And then finally, your impact, it's never wasted. Remember, even a small conversation, it's never wasted, even if you can't see the echo yet. So these are all things I had to learn, and I hope it's also something that helps you too. Maybe it's something you needed to hear today. And I'm curious, out of the aha moments I shared with you, which one resonated most with you? Share with me in the comments. I'd love to hear. Yeah, thank you for listening to me today. I hope you could take something out of it, and I'm sending you so much love, and I see you next time.